Good afternoon and welcome. At this time, we'd like to start our Suffolk City Council work session. Be advised that Councilmember Butler Barlow will not be present and has been excused. Our first item for discussion is a fiscal year 25-26 real estate assessment report. Mr. Manager.
Yes, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, at this time, City Assessor, Mr. Holt-Butt, will present the report.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, finally, to be able to do this report. I was a little worried that the weather gods weren't going to work with me tonight either, but anyway, so here we are. I will apologize briefly. I broke a tooth yesterday, and I'm in this terrible pain right now, so if my voice is cracking or whatever, if I need to take a break, I'm sorry about that. So anyway. Tonight what I'll discuss is our authority and responsibilities. I'll outline the real estate market pertaining to the City of Suffolk from January 1, 2024 through December 31st, 2024. I'll present the results of my annual reassessment, and I'll provide a summary of the next steps. So, pursuant to state code, my duty is to list and maintain records on all real property within the City of Suffolk, and to ensure that the burden of the taxation shall rest equally upon all the city's property owners. State code requires assessments to be uniform among classes of property within geographic boundaries, and they also require assessors to strive for 100% of fair market value. Fair market value is the price a property will bring when it's offered for sale by one who desires but is not obliged to sell it, and bought by one who's under no necessity of having it. This slide has my office's mission statement, and I won't read it verbatim, but I will say that it's very important that we operate with this mission in mind, and I think we do a pretty good job of achieving that. Some of our daily functions include inspecting and collecting data on all new construction, reviewing and updating records on existing properties, performing statistical analyses, process and validate property transfers, process parcel combinations and subdivisions, and provide assistance to the public. Some of my objectives are, always dealing with human capital investments, staff development through IAAO and Virginia Department of Taxation courses. We have a new career progression program, and I'm trying to make sure that my staff is progressing along in that. And it's something that lends credibility to what we do, because they have to meet certain educational requirements to go through the process. Try to keep my employees engaged through committees in the office and some morale boosting activities that we do throughout the year. And then, of course, tech is where it's at these days, and we must stay on top of the technology. It's rapidly advancing, and thanks to the budget team and the city manager here, we've been able to do that. We have some really good technology in our office that we're utilizing, and it's given us good results. So we'll focus on the market for a few slides. This is mainly going to deal with residential properties right now. Interest rates, of course, are much higher than they were 3 years ago. We've expected this. They settled in about an average over the year of about 6.76%, a little less than last year. But they don't see a big seem to be a big deterrent to buyers, honestly. The buyers are still out there. The deterrent is the sellers. They're all locked into these 2 and 3% interest rates, so they're not going anywhere right now, because if they sell, they got to buy something else. So we don't see the rates being a big deterrent at the moment. Transfers, 2024 transfers, we had over 3,200 transfers. Really healthy number of transfers, and it's the most since 2021. Every time I pull these numbers, I'm kind of surprised, but even with the low inventory out there, we still have transferred a lot of properties the last year. Foreclosures. Foreclosures remain very low. Last year we got up to 88 of them. We're back down in the 50s now. My personal forecast was after the pandemic, I thought we'd see a lot of foreclosures, but that just didn't happen, and that's really good news to see. The median days on the market for sold properties, and this is for single-family detached properties, creeping up a little bit, but it's still very, very low. This is a direct indicator of supply, the low supply that's out there. House goes on the market and it's sold almost right away. And our median sales price here in Suffolk is now, and this is for single-family detached, is $410,000. If you do add in condos and townhouses, it goes down to about $395,000. Still a pretty impressive number for us here in Suffolk. And this is going back to 2015. It's the number of new homes delivered annually. Last year we had 595 homes delivered with an average assessed value of $465,700. Okay, moving on to the commercial side of the house. We're going to go through several categories, multifamily, industrial, retail, and office. Multifamily vacancy rates are about 8.1%. The region average, 5-year average, is 9.8%. We had 0 delivered units in 2024 with 108 units absorbed in 2024. Rent growth was about 4.7%, and for the Hampton Roads region, that number was 2.5%, so we're outpacing the region there. And average rents in Suffolk are $1,711 a month. The region is $1,530 a month, so again, we're outpacing the region. And then market prices for multifamily properties range from $120,000 to $210,000 per door, depending on the type of property it is, whether it's a Class A, Class B, or Class C. Okay, the industrial market. That's in Suffolk, that's sort of broken up into 2 pieces. The South Suffolk market. This market has the largest inventory of industrial space in all of Hampton Roads. Vacancy rates are at 7.3%, which is up about 1.4% and climbing. The long-term average is 6.4%. Number of delivered units was about 1 million square feet last year, and the number of absorbed units was 633,000 square feet. The rent is still growing at 4.5%, and industrial property sales volume was $217 million for about 1.5 million square feet. The North Suffolk industrial area, vacancy rates are 0. long-term average of about 6. Number of delivered units is 0. Number of absorbed units is the same. Rent growth of about 3.3%, and the sales volume was 55.4 million for 760,000 square feet. The retail market, again, I've stood up here for 4 years now and been surprised at the retail numbers. The vacancy rates are 2.1% with about 50,000 square feet of available space. New units delivered last year were 26,200 square feet with 22,300 square feet being absorbed. Rent growth, again, quite healthy at 7.5%, and that's compared to the wider Hampton Roads market of about 6.6%. And there was $25.4 million worth of retail space sold last year, and that was about 160,000 square feet. The office market, vacancy rates are about 6%, long-term average of 8%, no delivered units, and about 4,700 square feet absorbed last year. Rent growth was about 1.2%, which is lower than the regional average of 2.6%. And there was, oh, that's a misprint, that date should be 2024, sales volume of about $3.7 million. All right, moving into our reassessment results. We assessed a total of 42,639 taxable parcels. Of those 42,000, 38,430 of them are residential, 2,587 are commercial, 1,622 agricultural. Residential property values increased by about a little more than $720 million, or 6.05%. Commercial property values increased by $359 million, or 7.86%. Agricultural property values increased by about $28 million, or 6.06%. The total citywide value increased by $1.1 billion, or 6.54%. On this slide, you can see the land book value as of July 1, 2024 was $16.9 billion. The total proposed value for July 1, 2025 is a little over $18 billion. And the total percentage increase again is 6.54%. The value increase $1.1 billion, and the total impact on revenue at the current tax rate is $11.8 million. This next slide was something that I sort of came across earlier in the year and started updating it as we went. We talk about the burden being fairly distributed. Of all the parcels in the city, 90% of them are residential, and only 7% are commercial, and 3% are other. So you end up with a situation where you've got, in 2010, you've got 76% of our total value is residential, 19% commercial. So when I came here, one of my goals was to review every commercial property in the city. And we've gotten, and by review, I mean put my eyes on, put a tape on, and actually reappraise every commercial property in the city, because I knew we had some bad data there. So you can see here from 2010 through 2020, the commercial values increased by $375 million. Since 2020, they've increased by $2.4 billion. A lot of that, there is a lot of new construction, obviously, but there's a lot of cleanup, that we picked up there as well, and just getting these values where they should be. And what's happened here is, as you can see, the burden on the residential properties has gone down to 70% and gone up to 27% for commercial properties. We'll never get it anywhere near where they're close, but I think this is important to see what we're doing. Okay, the tax relief programs. Disabled veterans has now grown. This is a snapshot from 3 weeks ago. It was 2,174 recipients, almost $1 billion in value, and $10.3 million in exonerations. In 2022, there were 1,300 participants with $4.2 million in exonerations. In 2023, there were 1,730 and $8 million in exonerations. I can tell you, as I stand up here today, this number is probably more like 2195 right now. They are coming in daily, so this continues to grow off the charts. Senior citizen tax relief is up to about 1,280 recipients with $2.8 million in exonerations. This was a slight increase, which I was glad to see this year, because the last couple of years it's been going down for whatever reason, but I was kind of glad to see that go up. It kind of means the word is getting out there that the program exists. So going forward, the assessment notices are being prepared, and hopefully they'll be mailed by the end of this week. If not, they'll be trickling out early next week. We'll have informal hearings through April, Board of Equalization hearings in May, and we'll continue to process new construction and alterations for the end of the fiscal year. And our land book will be produced at the close of the fiscal year and will be effective July 2025. Before I conclude, I would like to brag a little bit about my staff, if I could. I'm just kind of the sound engineer. I get to stand up here and say what I say, but the rock stars are back there in my office, and that's no joke. We have 22 full-time staff that have over 330 years of experience. 9 residential appraisers, 2 commercial appraisers, 3 valuation managers, and support staff that's beyond compare, in my opinion. This year, our staff earned 3 new designations through the IAAO, and my main brag here is that this little office here in Suffolk has the second most IAAO designations in the state of Virginia, and we're second only to, I believe it's Arlington County, that has almost 4 times the amount of staff that we have. So these designations are very hard to get, and they lend credibility to what we do, and I am very proud of that fact. So with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Buck. Council, questions or comments? All righty. Time to mess it up. Councilmember Rector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Really, thank you for this report. It's obviously very detailed. I think it reflects a very healthy housing market for the most part, and commercial market in the city of Suffolk. But for those of us that have really short-term memories, because I know I asked this question last year, can you tell me the difference between a delivered unit and an absorbed unit?
So it's easy to, so like an apartment, if somebody built 100 units, that would be 100 delivered units. And if 50 of them were rented, that's 50 absorbed units.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Council, any other questions or comments? Councilman Johnson?
I just want to make a comment. I would like
Whoops.
to thank Billy and his staff for what they've done. I've been on council long enough to know that it's not always like this, so we are so pleased that everything, we aren't getting the phone calls and you're taking care of it, and we certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Council, any other questions? Mr. Butt, thank you for your report. Some very impressive numbers with the increase that we have. I know we don't have a breakdown. I can see the increase in values of residential and commercial, but I think what's most relevant, especially in the commercial side of it, when you look at it, is a lot of that is new that's come on board. And then you also mentioned the percentage of taxes, you know, how it's the weight of taxation has continued over the years to shift from residential to commercial, which is where we want it. It also, based on discussions that we've had, especially in regards to warehousing and that type of thing on the northern end, you know, around Northgate, the availability was zero at this time. So it substantiates what council has been talking about, is that in those particular areas, it has been built out. And now we do have some capacity on the south side, if you would, the southern end of the city. But these are very impressive numbers, especially on the commercial side. Just to piggyback on what Councilmember Johnson said, you and your staff continue to do and just exemplary job, not only in just the fact-finding and coming up with numbers, but also whatever processes that you have put in place to handle inquiries from our citizens. Because we get, at least from my standpoint, and I think everybody else's, we get very few questions, which means that they're being answered on your level. And I, for one, greatly appreciate that, and I know that our citizens do. I've had them call me back or just tell me in the course of running into them, you know, I had a question with my assessment, I thought it was too high, blah, 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 but I went down, it was explained to me, and I'm okay with it. And sometimes they're not, but more times than not that they are, because you supply the data that supports your decision. And once again, thank you very much. This is very, I know the manager appreciates it come budget time, that we don't ever want more than we're due as a city, but at the same time, for it to be fair and equitable to everyone, just like it states in the statute, all the properties have to be assessed, you know, on the same basis, under the same circumstances.
Yes, sir.
So thank you very much, and I look forward to our July report.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now move to our next topic, which is the Southeastern Public Service Authority Agreement and update. Mr. Manager.
Yes, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, as you may recall, at a previous city council work session, the SIPSA Executive Director, Dennis Bagley, provided an update on SIPSA's activities, inclusive of considerations for future municipal waste handling. At that time, Mr. Bagley said he'd be back in the future to continue to provide additional city council's updates. And so we have Mr. Bagley here tonight to tell you where we're at SIPSA, where we're at this time. Dennis?
Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, thank you for having me back to talk with you again this evening. I'm really excited about where SIPSA is and where we're going. But before I get started, I wanted to introduce my colleague, Norman Strickland. He's our Director of Operations. He's with me tonight. I love to talk trash. And whenever I go present and begin to talk trash, I have to have a colleague with me. So if I carry on too long, his direction is to get me off the microphone. So hopefully he'll do that and we'll get out of here on time tonight. But before I do get into my presentation, I wanted to call to your attention, most of you already know this, there was a fire at the regional landfill on Sunday. I got a call about 3:30 on Sunday morning. When I got to the landfill at about 4 o'clock, staff was already on it. I want to, first of all, commend you for your fire department. their professionalism. We've dealt with them a number of times, and I could not ask for a better partner in a situation like that in the Suffolk Fire Department. They always are professional and stand up, and they do what they say they're going to do, and they provide guidance when guidance is needed. So I appreciate that. The fire was a result of lithium batteries, and lithium batteries has become an issue with all types of waste operations, whether it be a processing facility, a transfer station, or a region or a landfill. Lithium batteries, there's a proper way to dispose of them, but oftentimes folks decide they're not going to follow the proper procedure, and they throw them in the trash. You end up in the landfill. When they run over with a compactor and damage, they cause fires. The trade organizations that I'm a member of, this is an issue that's a hot topic for everybody. The Atlantic Landfill in Waverly has had 12 fires in the last 8 months because of lithium batteries. We've had 2 in the last 2 months, and previous to that, we've had 2 in 30 years. So we've taken some steps immediately to try to deal with that. First of all, we're changing the type of cover that we're using. We put out flyers on our websites, and we're asking all the localities that are members of our TIPS communities to post that on their website. It's the proper way to dispose of lithium batteries. We offer that service. All the citizen has to do is come to the regional landfill. We'll take those batteries and we'll dispose of them properly. We are hopeful that the new cover process that we're using is going to assist in ensuring that they don't ignite. There always happens when you're not there, but we hope this will help with that situation. So moving on, unless there are any questions about the fire, I'll go into my presentation tonight. First of all, to the agenda for this evening, I tried to break it down because there's a lot of information I want to share with you, and I want to be mindful of your time. First of all, I want to talk about the expansion of the regional landfill. We've recently had some activity that's we're excited about, and I want to share that with you. One of the roles that SIPSA has is to ensure that we have safe and reliable disposal of solid waste, for not just for today, but for the future. And I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing to try to make that happen. And as the city manager's already said, I was here with you about a year ago, and we were starting the process of an RFP for alternative waste disposal. I want to give you an update on that. I want to talk a little bit about the future of recycling, then talk about our use and support agreements that we have with all of our member communities, including Suffolk. Then I want to talk about some cost-benefit analysis that we've done on some projects that we're working on. And then I'll be glad to take any questions you might have. First of all, a lot of folks ask, why is expansion of the regional landfill needed? First of all, the current capacity that we have that's permitted is only 9.8 million cubic yards. And I say 9.8 million cubic yards, and you say, how much is that? I'm going to try to explain in layman's terms how much 9.8 million cubic yards is. It sounds like a lot, but it's really not a lot when we're talking about the future of the disposal of waste in the region. The projected annual average, and I say this, these are key words, projected annual average. Each year, the PDC projects growth, and we use that in our numbers as well. But what we've done to simplify this is we've taken the average over a period of time, and it looks like that's about 506,000 tons per year of waste that's produced and would be going into the regional landfill. The current permitted capacity, if we continue at the rate we're moving now at 506,000 tons, 9.8 million cubic yards, the capacity would go away in the year 2034. We'd have no more capacity. So the question is, well, you've got until 2034. Why are you trying to permit cell 8? And the answer to that's pretty simple, both 8 and 9. In our business, if you have 5 years before you need capacity, you're in an emergency situation. It takes a long time to permit a landfill. And the remaining land at the regional landfill is wetlands. So if we're going to expand a landfill into wetlands, you can take that 5 years and you can turn it into 10 years before you'd be ready to actually build. So with that, construction of cell 7 will be beginning soon, and we have an integrated landfill. That means we dig down about 60 feet to the center. That way we have capacity underground. And we move that soil someplace else, and then we use that as cover material every day. As we put waste in, we put the soil back. So you need a place to put that. So in order to do that, we had to permit that space. We've been working on this for about 5 years now. And I'll give you some more news on that in a few minutes. Cell 8 and 9 that we're in the process of trying to permit would provide us 16 million cubic yards of additional airspace. And that 16 million cubic yards would provide us disposal capacity at the previously rate that I gave you, 506,000 tons, through 2060. Now that sounds like a long time away, but when you get to 2060, there is no more capacity at the regional landfill. In an effort to try to get cells 8 and 9 approved, SIPSA board agreed to give up cells 10, 11, and 12 because they were all wetlands. And the EPA said that was cumulative impacts. Those cumulative impacts would have meant we'd had too many impacts to ever get cells 8 and 9 permitted. So we agreed to give up those cells in order to get 8 and 9. Had we not done that, there would be no chance of us getting cells 8 and 9 permitted. So that's kind of the position we were in. So what I'm telling you is that at 506,000 tons, in the year 2060, we will be out of disposal capacity and have to go outside of the region in order to dispose of our waste. The required environmental impact statement to expand into cells 8 and 9 was posted to the Federal Registry last Friday on February 28th. And it's been the conclusion of about 4.5, 5 years of work to get to that point. The comment period for that EIS would end on March 31st, and then sometime after March 31st, the Army Corps of Engineers can issue a record of decision on the wetlands permit. The least environmentally damaging practical alternative, and you've heard this term before, I'm sure, is LEDPA, has been determined to be expansion of the regional landfill. There were multiple on-site alternatives that were reviewed, and there were multiple off-site alternatives that were reviewed. Some of them were in the city of Suffolk, some were in Southampton County. It was finally determined after many analysis and tests, and it was reviewed by just about everybody in federal government, that the least environmentally damaging practical alternative is expansion. So we are hopeful that soon after March 31st, we will receive a record of decision that will allow us to expand into cells 8 and 9 at the regional landfill. We agreed as part of this, no future expansion at the landfill. So again, that 2060 date is an important date. SIPSA's purchased mitigation credits to cover one-to-one loss for every acre of wetlands that we will be disturbing to build cells 8 and 9. We've purchased mitigation credits from a bank to cover those. We've also purchased some wetlands around the landfill and put in an environmental easement on those. I've got a map of the regional landfill, and is there a pointer on here? I'm not sure if there's a pointer on this or not, but you can see the regional landfill, and you all are familiar with where 58 is. The area to the left of the screen between the houses that would be on Nansemond Parkway, that is called the NAR property, and many of you are probably familiar with the NAR property. We purchased that whole entire 250 acres of property that were there, and what it's done is it's given us a buffer all the way around the landfill, so those trees will never go away. There'll be that large buffer there, and we are putting an environmental easement on that so nothing can ever be built on that land moving forward. There's a nice pond there. It's a nice walking area. It's a beautiful piece of property, and it will be preserved into perpetuity. And most of you also know the Magnolia Farms property across the street. There's another Magnolia Farms that's down the street, but directly across 58, there's a section of wetlands that butts up to the Dismal Swamp. We purchased another 220 acres, 260 acres of wetlands there, and we're putting an environmental easement on that, and that will be preserved in perpetuity as well as part of our mitigation credits for the wetlands. And I really just wanted to show you that area and show that around the whole entire regional landfill, we have a large buffer now. And that's not only just beneficial to the city, it's certainly beneficial to SIPSA as we move forward with expansion. So one of the things that I'm tasked with every day is ensuring that we have future disposal capacity for the region. I'm tasked to have 20 years of capacity. I look at it as that being a minimum and look at how much can we gain, how much capacity can we gain to make sure that when I'm gone and my children are gone, there's still capacity here in the region for disposal. Because no matter what we do, there will always be a need for disposal at some level. We've been exploring a lot of different ways to maximize the remaining airspace at the regional landfill. We fly a drone on a regular basis, take airspace analysis to ensure that we're compacting the waste as much as we can, but those are incremental improvements. We've been looking for those big items where we can add multiple years to the life of the regional landfill. Reducing volume of waste at the landfill will conserve the remaining airspace, but more importantly, we've got to make sure that we have a safe and reliable place to put our waste into the future. And through the efforts that I'm getting ready to share with you, I believe we're going to be able to do that. We put out an RFP back in February of 2024. We received a number of responses to that RFP. The RFP was for alternative waste disposal. And what that means is something other than landfilling. We were very clear in that landfilling was not an option for this request for proposal. We wanted somebody to come in and tell us how they could reduce the amount of waste that we were putting in a landfill. And with that came 12 months of grueling investigations, of site visits, of a committee that the SIPSA board appointed. We thoroughly vetted every proposal that was provided. And last Wednesday, the SIPSA board passed a resolution authorizing the committee to continue negotiations with only one of those vendors. That vendor is Commonwealth Sortation. They're out of Denver, Colorado, and the board determined that they were the most qualified vendor that had provided proposals, and directed staff to finalize negotiations and come back to them with a final contract for their review and action appropriately. So the alternative waste disposal, it includes multiple components. The first component that was provided is mixed waste sortation. What that means is you would, instead of having a blue can as you currently have, where the homeowner puts in their recyclables in one can and all the trash goes in the other, you just put everything in one can. What we've found over the years is that Americans are typically not willing to do that. They're not willing to sort their waste. Only a handful of folks do that. This process uses AI, robotics, and other high-tech sorting equipment to take out recyclables from the waste stream. So a homeowner would throw all their waste in a can. You have one truck comes by the house, they pick it up, they bring it to us, we run it through a processing plant, and it pulls all the recyclables out. And I'm going to give you some numbers in a few minutes that are staggering, and I mean they're staggering, about what we're able to do. As we remove the recyclables out of the waste stream, we're also looking at organics. This process will remove all of the organics out. That's the food waste, the brush, debris, leaves, grass, dirt. It pulls it out of the waste stream. And ultimately, this company is willing to guarantee that they can reduce our waste stream going into the regional landfill by 50%. And that's important because and I'll talk about that in a minute, what that means to our overall life of the landfill. This would increase the life of the landfill into the end of the century, from 2060 into the end of the century, because we've reduced at least by half what we've been putting in there. Now at 500, it would go down to 250. So of course you would, depending on how quickly we can get this started, that would depend on how far we'd be able to take it. But we're looking at the end of the century. Now that's a big number. And then there's other work that still needs to be done, but somebody else will need to do it other than me. Would provide performance guarantees. This is important because you can say whatever you want to say, but if you have liquidated damages tied to performance measures, then that usually means that the contractor's going to do what they said they're going to do, especially if we're going to be investing the kind of money that we're talking about. So the alternative waste disposal that we're talking about would increase the regional recycling rates and eliminate the need for blue cans. You would no longer have a blue can. You could if you wanted to. If you wanted to pay for that service, you could do that, but the recycling could be taking place in the black can. The project would represent a capital investment by an outside firm of $100 million into the region. And a final contract would require a 20-year term commitment for SIPSA to provide the waste to that company. And that's an important part, and that's kind of the next part of the presentation after we get through the future of recycling. Conventional recycling costs continue to skyrocket. You know that. I'm sure that your city manager has told you that. Recycling rates that were reported to DEQ this year, they're required to be reported by the Solid Waste Planning Unit, which is the HRPDC. It was reported in 2024 at 25.8%. Virginia DEQ has set mandates or mandatory recycling rates based on population and employment rates. And our region, our Solid Waste Planning Unit, the requirement for us is 25%. And any time that we fall below the 25% recycling rate within the region, then DEQ could come back and say, it's time for a recycling action plan, and you have to put together a plan that would increase your recycling above that percentage. Using AI and state-of-the-art sorting equipment that we're talking about will ensure that we will always be over that because we're looking at 20% recyclables just in commodity recycling, not including the organics. The organics brings that number up even higher. So we talked about a 20-year term a minute ago. One of the issues that we're dealing with, and I brought this to your attention a year ago, was that the initial term of our use and support agreements will end on June the 30th of 2027. If you, I'm sorry, the term ends, but you would have to, any of the member communities that wanted to get out of SIPSA would have to let us know 18 months in advance of that if they wanted to get out. But I want to tell you that SIPSA has reinvented itself over the last 12 years, and I am so proud to be a part of it. And we have proven that we are able, very capable, and able to provide quality service to our citizens that's safe and efficient. We are a leader in this industry now. We oftentimes are called on to speak at events because we know what we're doing, and we do it well, and we have good employees. And anyone who has not had an opportunity to see our regional landfill, I will personally take you on a tour. I'm very proud of what we do. I'm proud of the people that work at SIPSA, and I'm proud of our financial situation. There's nothing about the organization I'm not proud of. And part of what's caused this is our current use and support agreements. They were solid. They were well written. The problem is they're only for 10 years. And we in order to enter into a contract with somebody who's looking to invest $100 million, they need a 20-year deal for us to provide them the waste, or they're not going to be able to get financing for that kind of money. So one of the things that we're going to be coming to you, I've told you this a year ago, and it's coming to fruition now, we really have got to get busy on renewing our use and support agreements and looking at a 20-year term versus a 10-year term. And I think we've taken the risk out of that by the work that we've done to reinvent SIPSA, and you have members on your council that can attest to the work that we've done, and that we are doing a good job, and that we will continue to do a good job, and that we have policies in place to ensure that this continues. So I think that the use and support agreement that we have is not a risk to any of our member communities to extend that, because we are going to do what we said we were going to do. So with that, we are requesting that each of our member communities consider extending their use and support agreements to 20 years. We have a council with Wilcox Savage that's working on this now. They will be sending something over to the manager in the near future to go through their legal process, and then it'll be a draft, and we're hopeful that we'll get something back and we can go back and forth until we can clean it up. But really, the largest change in the use and support agreement that's worked very well for 10 years is the term. Most of the other language will remain exactly the same. So some of the things that we're I've already actually went over that already. So I want to talk about cost benefit analysis a little bit, because as you look at the programs that SIPS is looking to bring in, the first thing you got is how much it's going to cost, and that was a question that was asked at the last time I came before you, and I didn't have an answer because we hadn't seen any numbers come back yet. But we do have some preliminary numbers. These are not final numbers. Let me be clear about that, because we're doing some negotiating now on some value engineering that we think can bring the price down. We also are looking at some terms within the contract that we think will bring the price down. But this is the price that we are with the terms that we've agreed on at this point. Suffolk's total tons of waste is 57,572 tons. The tip fee for alternative waste disposal, this is Suffolk's tip fee to SIPSA for alternative waste disposal, would go to $88 a ton. You currently pay $65 a ton. But here's where the interesting part comes in. The current total cost for municipal solid waste and recycling to the city of Suffolk, you pay $5,469,214. With the alternative waste disposal, with recycling included, your rate would go to $5,066,336. That results in a decrease in your overall expenditures for recycling and waste disposal by $400,000. That's a real number. That's the numbers that I applied. I got information from your staff here. We sat down, we talked about it. These are real numbers. That's what it would look like in terms of cost for Suffolk. Now, that doesn't hold true for all of the member localities, but it does hold true for Suffolk. The other thing we looked at was what was the recycling rates. Currently, Suffolk is recycling 3,755 tons. That's not what's going in the blue can, but once the blue can gets to be processed and what's pulled out of that and what's actually being recycled is 3,755 tons. With alternative waste disposal, and I want to emphasize this as well, I used a conservative number. If you look, this is 40%, and I wanted to highlight that because I don't want to overstate anything to any of our member communities. I use 40%, but they're guaranteeing 50%. But I wanted to be conservative with the numbers. Alternative waste disposal tons that we would be able to recycle at 40% would be 23,028 tons. The current recycling rate that you all for curbside recycling is 6.52%. And with alternative waste disposal, again, the company says 50%, but I wanted to give you a conservative number, and I dropped that 10% to 40%. But they are willing to guarantee it at 50%. But I did want to bring that to your attention of why it says 40%. What are the next steps? SIPSA will provide a red line amended use and support agreement for each member community. We will send it through the city manager's office and through the legal, through your city attorney's office for review, mark it up, send it back. Brett Spain with Wilcox Savage is working on SIPS's behalf on this. Once we can come to an agreement, we would be hopeful that the member communities would execute that final version of a use and support agreement that would give us the authority to move forward with negotiations with the firm for a 20-year agreement. The final drafts of any contract for alternative waste disposal would be presented to the SIPSA board for review and action. And then a draft revised standard operating procedure, which is also as part of the final use and support agreement, would be presented to the SIPSA board for their review and action. It's important to note that any contract, bottom of this is cut off, but any contract that goes before the board, for the SIPSA board, for approval that would change the disposal mechanism requires 75% of the member localities or 75% of the voters on the board. And you all know each member locality, there's 8 of them, and each of them have two voting members, one that's appointed by the governor and one that's appointed by the council. So any decisions on a contract and any decision on changing the SIPS's standard operating procedure would have to go before the board and have to require a 75% vote. So just because you would agree to a 20-year use and support agreement doesn't mean that all these things are going to take place. There's still an opportunity to question, ask for more information before we ever enter into a final agreement with a contractor or change our standard operating procedures. I just want to make sure that's clear. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions anyone may have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bagley. Council, questions or comments? Councilmember Bennett?
Yes, sir. Thank you. A couple of questions. On the tip fee, Suffolk has reduced rate in the past. How will that come with this contract?
Suffolk does not have a reduced rate. What they receive is a host fee for any waste that goes in the landfill. So you get, I think it's $4.70.
Right. So that will remain the same, or will, because I'm looking at, we're talking 2060, that's a long time out, and it's going to be in Suffolk. So I'm just wondering, want to make sure that we are being treated fairly with being the disposal capital.
City Manager?
Yeah, if I may, that's two separate agreements. Excuse me. If I may, that's two separate agreements, the sport agreement, and then we have a host agreement. The host agreement stays as it is at this time. Then that's where your $4 and, which increases every year by the CPI.
It's 471, I believe,
Yeah.
this year.
So it continues to decrease per tonnage, but it has no, if we modify the support agreement, that's not modified in the host agreement. They're two separate agreements.
Okay, okay, all right, thank you. And the other thing with looking at the expansion of the landfill, where the other cells are going close to 58,
Yes, sir.
is that going to be screened wherein that as you're coming in 58, it's not going to be seen from 58 coming in?
Yes, sir. Actually, there's some areas that when we permitted cell 7,
Yes.
there's an environmental easement on 2 pieces of property that screen that completely from 58. You can't see it. It's just those 2 parcels. There's a triangle down in kind of in the bottom right at 58, and then just above that, between the triangle and the blue outlined areas, those are preservation areas, and they have easements already on that. They can't, none of the trees can be removed. There were some trees removed for the pipeline that went through there, but we didn't have anything to do with that. But that will definitely shield anything from 58. You wouldn't be able to see that.
Okay, because the reason I was asking that, looking at how they're clearing all that for the flyover?
Yes, sir.
And look to me, that's coming close up to where that, sale gonna be.
Actually, it's not, because the flyover was moved further east on 58 to allow for more time for traffic to enter into 58 and be able to go 58 west or to downtown. So that flyover is further down onto the Kirk property. They actually had to buy Kirk property, 12 acres, I believe it was, to put that flyover circle in. So the area you're seeing is a good distance down from where
Where the
the
sale will be.
expansion's gonna take place.
Okay, my final question or comment is, on the, waste disposal, recycling,
Yes, sir.
when will that probably be in effect where you dump it all in one can?
Well, that's depending on when we use and support agreements. I would like for it to happen tomorrow, but I'm a realist. I understand it's not going to happen. Because the sooner we can make that happen, the more airspace we can save at the landfill. But it's really dependent on the use and support agreements and negotiations, how they go. We've had very good success with negotiations up to this point. We see no reason why we won't continue to do that. But the use and support agreements with the member localities are important. We've known this all along. We've got to get those done before we're going to be able to ink a contract for them to start building, and then they will be able to start receiving some of the waste right away, and within about a year of that, they would be able to take the remainder of the waste for processing.
Okay, because I know we're about.
That's for, I'm sorry, let me clarify that if I can,
Okay.
Councilman. They will be able to take the recyclables in. The second part of that, the organics, will be a little longer than that, but the recyclable portion, the sorting part of it, would be probably about 18 to 20 months after a contract was signed.
Okay, because I know we're about ready, our contract back with recycling is about ready to do, that's the reason why I was asking those questions.
Yes, and we're going to be bringing that back under a different presentation on our TFC contract and the timing on that.
Okay.
But I guess, Dennis, conservatively, we're talking 3 to 4 years for the full.
Before it's fully enacted, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councilman Rector?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for the presentation. Just a couple of quick questions, and actually one's a comment. I'm excited about the fact that the recycling rates can be increased significantly. My question about that is that if we increase our ability to segregate recyclable goods from non-recyclable goods in other localities in places all across the country, is the processing in place or available to actually handle those materials that are pulled out to be recycled?
Oh, yes, sir, definitely. This is plastic recycling has become a big issue because of the cost to make new plastic. We were approached by a company out of Europe called LyondellBasell, one of the largest plastic manufacturers in Europe, about receiving all of our waste, but all they wanted to take out of it was the plastic. They wanted to do this very thing, but they just wanted to take the plastics out, because then they can make plastic much cheaper and they can get long-term agreements because the cost is consistent. There's a huge market for plastics. There's a huge market for cardboard. There's a huge market for steel and other metals. So the markets are there, absolutely. And there's a lot, AI has opened many other markets in the plastics that were never really something that you could approach. AI can identify just about everything in the trash. We've taken tours of facilities, and they've got 20 or 30 different types of plastic that they're pulling out and sorting using AI. So it's really an exciting time for our industry, because we can do so many things.
Then my second question is the DEQ requirement that you have X% of recyclable material pulled out. If a locality drops curbside road recycling, how does that number get achieved?
Well, first of all, they don't require that you take 25% out of the waste, out of the trash. It's a 25% total recycling rate. So there's a lot of things that count into that. All the boxes that go into Walmart, they're counted as recyclables for the region. And it's not for each individual city. We're a solid waste planning unit, and that solid waste planning unit is the SIPSA service area. So although some of our localities don't recycle at all, they are mixed in with those who are recycling, and then those commercial entities. There are a lot of things that you probably wouldn't consider recyclable material that gets considered recyclables to make up that 25%. So it's really not just individual localities and what they're pulling out of the waste stream. It's the overall recycling within the communities.
Good. And then finally, if we wanted to take you up on your offer for a site visit, would we contact Al, who would contact you?
That will work out just fine.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Vice Mayor Ward?
Yes, I want to ask this question, and I might have either a comment or a complaint. Are you the one who remove the blue can? Do you all remove the blue can?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. I don't have no another, sir. Thank you.
Council, any other questions or comments? If not, Mr. Bagley, I've got maybe a question or two and a comment or two. I think I understand the premise of why we need to permit sales 8 and 9, and this is to guarantee, everything will be to guarantee the 20-year capacity to enable you to negotiate the contract, consummate the contract with Commonwealth sortation, which Commonwealth sortation is going to sort through all our trash, take out at least a minimum of 25%, do the recycling. That kills all recycling, reduces the amount of trash that goes in the landfill. But to do that, we've got to do the 2 cells. Now, the member agreements were they renew, according to this, if there's no notice within 18 months, they renew for 10 years. Well, how's that going to work with a 20-year agreement? Would that be amended to a 20-year commitment?
That's the key here of amending the support agreement to take that term and make it 20 years.
So whoever signs up member-wise is going to have to do it.
Well, all the communities who are members would have to.
What we would be asking is that we amend the current agreement and make it 20 years and then sign it again,
Okay.
the amended agreement now. Not wait till this expires, because if we wait till it expires, we wouldn't be able to do anything so far as negotiating the contract until that use and support agreement expired. So this is just a way to move forward now and go ahead and say, have an amended use and support agreement that we would present to you. Your legal team would look through it. You all would become comfortable with it. We change what we needed to change, and then agree to a 20-year term. It'd just be amendment of the existing. And the reason why we chose an amendment was because the current agreement is very solid. It protects both parties, and it's worked well for the region over the past 10 years. We've had 0 issues. And that stands to reason that's a strong agreement. And we're open for other changes if they're needed, but that's a starting point, really.
Okay, my other question has to do with, I guess, Commonwealth sortation. I mean, I'm sure they're a pretty solid firm, but it appears that you're kind of putting all your eggs in one basket. I mean, what assurances do we have? I mean, a performance guarantee is only as good as the paper it's written on and the person signing it, unless it's bonded. So are we bonded, or, we can talk about a $100 million investment, but until it's invested, it doesn't happen. I mean, it's something similar to, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, there was supposed to be there was a company coming in to do pellets and spend hundreds of millions of dollars, and it all went in the toilet. So for us, I mean, to do the contract itself would just be something to consider. I mean, I guess we can look at that later. I'm more concerned about what Council Member Bennett alluded to. We have a host agreement that's going to be expiring pretty soon. I can't remember how long. No.
The host agreement does not expire until the landfill operations are complete. The host agreement is separate from the
good
use and support
forever.
agreement. So that agreement is a separate agreement that has its own term that is not impacted by any of the stuff that we're
Okay,
talking
so
about
the
now.
landfill agreement cannot be amended.
If all the parties agree, any agreement can be amended.
Anything could be amended.
But everyone who's a party to it has to agree to it.
Okay.
So SIPSA can't tell us they're taking something out of an agreement. Because we're in an agreement, we have to agree to the change that they want to make.
Okay, so the host agreement cannot,
It's
Be
a separate
amended.
issue, and it's not being discussed here.
And I guess the conditional use permit, don't we still have to grant a conditional use permit to open both those cells?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we have to amend that too then?
No, you would need a new conditional use permit. You only have a
I know,
conditional.
what I'm saying is, unless a conditional use permit is passed to open up cell 8 and 9, it ain't gonna happen.
That is correct.
That is correct.
That's correct.
So if we were to choose to amend the host agreement as an incentive to provide a CUP for cell 8 and 9, that could be a possible scenario.
The approval of future cells is already contemplated, and there's no need to touch the host agreement. For all we have to do is consider through the application process for cells 8 and 9. That, at the time this was all negotiated, it was actually thought that we were going to have more than 8 and 9. Those rest of those cells have gone away. All of that was contemplated in the host agreement that exists now. There's no need to change the host agreement for cells 8 and 9.
Okay, well, I say my only concern was to Councilman Bennett's point. I mean, this is a 20-year, I mean, once we're done, we're in. I mean, it's in our city, and we're the ones that have to service it, just like we did the other day. So, I don't know, I guess it's something for later discussion. It's gonna have to come up sooner or later.
Mayor,
Okay.
I just wanted to also be clear that there is an escalator in that. So where it started at and where it will be 20 years from now is, there's a huge difference in the price per ton that SIPSA would pay now and 20 years from now. It is there, the escalator is clear.
Because, I mean, I just think based on the contract that we negotiated, initially the agreement we negotiated for the host agreement, that the expenses to our city have increased exponentially. And with that being said, before we make that commitment for 20 more years, open up 2 more cells, that's taken into consideration somewhere along the line. How we get there, I don't care. But I think it needs to be looked at. Okay, and with that, I'll leave it alone. Anybody else have any other questions or comments? If not, thank you very much, Mr. Bagley. We appreciate your update. You got a lot of work ahead of you.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes our work session. We do have a need for a closed meeting this afternoon. With that being said, Madam Clerk, will you please read the motion for consideration?
Pursuant to Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711A1, the discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for appointment and the assignment, appointment, and performance of specific public officers or appointees of the city. Specifically, the appointments as shown on the attached list for vacancies or term expirations for the Community Criminal Justice Board, 5th Judicial District, Early Childhood Development Commission, Economic Development Authority of the City of Suffolk, the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, Historic Landmarks Commission, Human Services Advisory Board, Local Board of Building Code Appeals, Paul D. Camp Community College Board, Sister Cities Commission, Southside Network Authority, Tidewater Youth Services Commission, Western Tidewater Community Services Board, and the Wetlands Board.
Council, a motion has been presented for consideration. Councilmember Bennett,
Move for approval.
got a motion for approval from Councilmember Bennett. Do I have a second? Councilmember Rector?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Rector. Do we have any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Bennett.
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson. Yes. Councilmember Rector.
Yes.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
Councilmember Wright. Vice Mayor Ward.
Yes.
Mayor Duman.
Yes.
The vote is approved by 7-0.
This meeting is adjourned, and we will reconvene at 6 p.m.